Test, test. The stream will be starting very soon. Sit tight. We'll be starting very soon.
Hello and welcome. I am Exit Light, and this is my podcast. Today, my guest host is Jory, who happens to be in the house with me. Hello, Jory.
Hey everybody, what's going on?
So, Jory is here on vacation, and we're going to do this podcast about something that the two of us have in common that we really like. And we are also going to have moderator Miya on this podcast with us. Hello, Miya.
Hi.
Yeah, you own it, Miya. Own it.
So shy and quiet. Used to being the quiet little moderator girl.
So, what we're going to talk about today is haunted New Orleans. And New Orleans is one of my favorite places on earth. And I know that Jory and Miya have the same opinion of New Orleans. But we're going to introduce you to some haunted parts of New Orleans today. And I hope that you'll all enjoy this. So, Jory, do you want to go ahead and start?
Yeah, that is fine with me. So I will be citing GhostCityTours.com for this information. And I am starting with Lafitte's Blacksmith Shop.
Jean Lafitte.
Jean Lafitte.
Okay.
Alright, so I'll hit you a little history and then we'll do some ghost stories. And yeah. So on Bourbon Street sits a quiet and unassuming building. Not only is it one of the oldest buildings in the French Quarter, it is also one of the most haunted. Lafitte's Blacksmith Shop has a long, haunted history. For years, there have been reports of ghosts, even what is possibly the ghost of Jean Lafitte haunting this building, which is now a bar. Lafitte's Blacksmith Shop gets its name from Jean Lafitte, who was a pirate and privateer who called New Orleans home in the early 1800s. A pirate and a privateer were essentially the same thing. A pirate worked for themselves, while a privateer worked for a government. They both looted and robbed and killed. One was just socially acceptable, and the other was not.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you didn't know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the government would contract you out to go out and rob your, let's say France wanted to steal from Spain. They would contract what they would call a privateer. So essentially, you were a pirate. You were just, it was okay to be a pirate.
Oh, that's weird. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lafitte is believed to have been born either in France or the French colony of Saint. I had it right earlier. Anyways, pretty much a French colony by 1805.
Somewhere in France.
Well, it's Saint Domingue.
Dominique. Yes.
Sorry for all the listeners out there. My French is.
They know my job is to tell you what the words are.
Yes, that's your only job.
Yep, it is.
By 1805, he operated a warehouse in New Orleans to help disperse the goods smuggled by his brother Pierre Lafitte. After the United States government passed the Embargo Act of 1807, the Lafittes moved their operations to an island in Barataria Bay, Louisiana. By 1810, their new port was very successful. The Lafittes pursued a successful smuggling operation and also started to engage in piracy. Now, the blacksmith shop, because it's not stating it, was actually owned by Jean Lafitte and his brother. It was a legitimate blacksmith shop.
And his brother's name was what? Pierre?
Pierre.
So do you know what their names would have been if it wasn't French?
What?
What was Jean and Pierre are?
Peter and John?
Yes.
God, I'm
Yes. Yeah, you are.
good. Okay.
They were named after saints.
Well,
They weren't saints.
not even close.
That's like naming a child Angel. It's going to go south.
Probably turn into a vampire and haunt Los Angeles. Lafitte became a local legend during the War of 1812 when he helped Andrew Jackson defend the city of New Orleans from capture at the hands of the British. Today, you'll see many landmarks and buildings with his name in New Orleans. All right, so now we've come to the ghosts of Lafitte's blacksmith shop. When it comes to the ghosts and hauntings at Lafitte's, it comes as no surprise that the ghost most often associated with this building is the ghost of Jean Lafitte himself. Interestingly, he appears as a full-bodied apparition. Full-bodied apparitions are not as common as movies would make them out to be. Most of the time, ghosts are often seen as a mist, sometimes even a shadow person. A full-bodied apparition would appear no different to you than a living person.
Hold on a second. Are they saying that a shadow person is a ghost?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Hey, that dog in the background really
I
messing
know.
me.
That dog in the background is making some noise.
She does not like me talking about Jean Lafitte.
No, she doesn't.
Anyways, a full-bodied apparition would appear no different to you than a...
I'm pouring something in a cup.
I was like, okay.
It might have sounded different than that. I'm going to put you on mute while I do that.
Thanks. I would like to be able to read. All right. A full-bodied apparition would appear no different to you than a living person, except in this case, our ghost is dressed in sailor's gear. The ghost of Jean Lafitte has never interacted with anyone. He has never said a word to anyone. He simply stands in the dark corners, staring at people until he is noticed, at which time his ghost disappears into the shadows. Now, this hasn't happened just one of two times. It seems to be a fairly common occurrence here at the blacksmith shop. He is always seen on the first floor, most of the time near the fireplace that is inside. Let's see here. So if you're going to be in New Orleans for another night, maybe you'll want to come hang out for a chance encounter with Mr. Lafitte himself. Even if you don't have a run-in with the most famous ghost which haunts here, the atmosphere is great. Which I noticed when we had visited New Orleans. The place is entirely lit by candles. They don't use electricity for the majority of the building.
Mm-hmm.
Which is pretty neat.
That is pretty neat.
Let's see here.
I've been in there.
Yeah, I tried to get in there. Mostly I just saw people as drunk as I was.
Did you see that from the potholes you were standing in?
Almost sleeping in. On the second floor of Lafitte's black shop, there seems to be another ghost which calls the bar home. I honestly had no idea there was a second floor.
Yeah, I heard that.
Tiny.
Oh, sorry. Somebody that I know, they said that their ghost tour person took them upstairs to the second floor and let them walk around.
Oh, really?
And yeah, try and see ghosts.
Oh, that is neat.
Yeah.
Okay. Nobody knows who this ghost is. We only know that it is the ghost of a woman. It could have been someone who lived here. Rumor has it that there was a woman who lived here in the 1890s who killed herself upstairs. We cannot find any verifiable sources on this, but it is entirely possible. Well, of course it is. Give me a break.
Mm-hmm.
This ghost is a little more mysterious. She has only shown herself to people on a handful of occasions. However, she is very talkative. Imagine sitting in one of the rooms upstairs by yourself late at night and hearing a woman whisper your name into your ear. Yeah, if that doesn't send shivers up your spine, not much will. But that is what she likes to do. She probably just wants to let you know that she is there, that she knows who you are, not realizing that by doing so, she has probably made a few people have a panic attack. I definitely would be crapping my pants.
Well, I've been on a couple ghost tours, and it was one of the stops where they would take a break halfway through and let you go in and get a drink or whatever. But well, on those tours I wasn't drinking. I didn't drink on a tour until I went with you, and you made me.
Yeah.
And your wife, you forced us. And and then on that tour they didn't take us to Jean Lafitte's.
No.
And I don't know why, but it's really nice. I mean, not fancy nice. I mean, it feels like you're stepping back in time. It's really interesting because it's very dark and shadowy. And if somebody wanted to write a vampire book or a movie or something, you know, to put their character in Jean Lafitte's would be pretty good because, you know, they're lit by candlelight and the shadows and everything. It's really neat.
Yeah. The whole French Quarter itself feels like you're stepping back in time. Like,
yeah,
you're walking on sidewalks that have been there for hundreds of years, and the buildings have all been there for hundreds of years, and you don't feel like you're in the present day when you're, at least for me, that's how it felt like.
Well, yeah, and another thing is that by ordinance, they can't change anything. So the buildings are still the exact same color they've always been. They have to paint them the historical colors. So in a way, you are stepping back in time because the outsides of these buildings, the cobblestone streets that are literally were made wide enough that a horse and carriage carrying coffins could ride down, are still the same width. They can't make them any wider. And of course, some of the buildings, their front doors, their front doors go right up to the edge of the street. So there would be no way to even make them wider if they wanted to.
Right.
And I think that's part of what I love about it, is that it is stepping back in history.
Yeah. If you're definitely a person that's just interested in history, not just ghosts, it's still an awesome place to go to. For
right.
Sure. Let's see here. There's one more story, and then I'll be done with this. Now, aside from the ghosts, there is another phenomenon that is often associated with Lafitte's blacksmith shop, and they are the phantom red eyes. There's never a body, never a voice, just piercing red eyes. They're always seen in the dark corners of Lafitte's. As soon as you make eye contact with it, the eyes will freeze on you before fading into nothing. Ghosts don't usually have red eyes. People have an unfortunate habit of lumping everything paranormal into the category of ghost. This isn't the case. Red eyes are a phenomenon reserved for demonic hauntings. So
they think that Jean Lafitte's could be haunted by something demonic?
It seems that way. I mean, I think you need to get more evidence on that, but considering how long that just that building alone, not just the property, but the building alone has been there, and everything that has happened there, I wouldn't put it past. I wouldn't put it past that situation to possibly have a demonic haunting.
You know, it doesn't feel like, nothing in the French Quarter feels like that to me. No. That doesn't feel like, I mean, it just doesn't have that.
It's such a good vibe. Like everybody, like every building you go into is just chilled and laid back.
Yeah, they're so kind and friendly, and
yeah,
So, I would be surprised to. I mean, there are a couple buildings like, the Lalaurie Mansion that's not friendly, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But, probably, obviously they had warehouses where they sold slaves and things like that, and
Right.
it might be a different case, but in general, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, France sent over all their, you know, murderers and rapists and thieves to build New Orleans, and I don't know, but somehow along the way, it just ended up that is not the vibe you get. It doesn't
Right.
feel scary or threatening. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it just depends on how you approach it, but
Hmm.
I never, well, outside of Restless Nights and the Hotel Provincial, I never really
Hmm.
felt stressed out or threatened or scared or anything like that.
Hmm.
Walking around and going into different buildings and just exploring. To me, it just had a really overall good vibe,
Right.
despite the very dark history that you're surrounded by.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's odd that way.
Yeah.
Um. So, do you have anything else you want to tell us about Jean Lafitte?
Well, I'll have a little bit more to talk about on my next go around for him, but as far as him particularly, that is the end of his bar and his haunts.
Okay. Well, I'm going to talk about the Hotel Provincial or the Hotel Provincial, and and so I'm just going to talk about. I'm not going to read anything about this particular section because I'm just going to talk about it. So the Hotel Provincial, um, part of this hotel was formerly a Civil War hospital. Specifically, it was used for amputations. And out in front of this hospital, they would lie, what's the word? Stack bodies up against the walls and
Uh huh.
stack limbs up against the walls. And they would wait for the carriages. They were so busy that the carriages would come and come and come and take away the bodies, take away the limbs until they could go take them and burn them. And so when you take a ghost tour in New Orleans, the Hotel Provincial is one of the main stops on a tour because of it's a violent history,
Hmm.
but because of the type of work they did at the hospital, the type of injuries, and during the Civil War, if you had not they're not called bullets. What were they called?
What came out of the muskets?
Yeah,
Um,
like a musket ball. I don't know what they're
yeah,
called.
yeah, musket ball.
Yeah, so if you had one go through your limb, they could save you. They would take the limb off. The thing is about musket balls is they were made with lead, and if they stayed in you, you could get lead poisoning. So they couldn't. They had to remove your leg. They didn't want the lead staying in you. Now, if it went through your torso, they let you die. They didn't have the time or the means to help you. It was time consuming. And they could saw a leg off in 15 seconds. They had it down to a science. So imagine what it was like not only to work in this hospital, but to be a patient in this hospital. They didn't have the kind of pain relief, that we have. And so it has that kind of a history to it. And Maya and I, we stayed in Building 5. And if you ever go, Building 5 is the former hospital. So we have a couple of stories about staying in the Hotel Provincial. I stayed there with Jory and his wife too, and our rooms were right next to the wall by the convent of the Ursuline nuns, and I'll talk about that in a little while. But in Building 5 is where they performed the amputations. So we stayed in a room, and if you ever have the chance and you want to stay in the quarter, this hotel, and they have a balcony, and we went on the first day of Mardi Gras, and mysteriously, like the Mardi Gras fairies somehow go out to your balcony without going into your room and completely decorate it every day with new beads. And you have to get out onto your balconies by a window. It's like a 9-foot window. You have to open the window and then bend down and walk out onto the balcony. They haven't changed the building at all, so they haven't put French doors in or anything like that. You're in a historical building. And Maya, do you want to tell this story?
Okay, we'll share both of our sides of the story.
Okay, so you want me to go first?
Yeah.
To tell, okay.
Yeah.
So Maya and I were there, and we had, spent the day looking through the art shops, and we had gone for her birthday, but she was not an adult. And so I did not take her all the way down Bourbon Street. We did have dinner at this really cool burger place on Bourbon Street that you also went to with me, Jory. And we had seen a parade, and it was just really fun. Got on a ghost tour, and it was slightly raining during the ghost tour. We ended up on this ghost tour with another person who had the same name I did, and 2 other people who had a very strange relationship history that I'm not going to get into, but it was unique, to say the least. And then we had gone to go get to Cafe du Monde to go get the beignets, of course. And it was a long day. So we went in. Maya went to go take a shower, and I was, changing clothes, and I saw on the wall, and I think the paint on the wall was like a very light yellow. Is that right, Maya?
It was almost an off-white.
Yeah. And I see on the wall, there's nothing there, okay? And then slowly there's a handprint, a large, man's handprint on the wall, and it's very, very faint. And it starts to get darker and darker to the point where I am taking pictures of it. And I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe this is happening. This is a place that you cross your fingers and you're like, I hope that if there's anything going to happen, it's going to happen here, because that's an awesome story. And I start yelling for Maya. So go ahead, Maya.
Well, I was getting ready to take a shower, and I was in the bathroom, and I was already spooked being in the hotel, because when I got there, I didn't know what the hotel was used for. I didn't know that Building 5 was used for amputations and stuff. I think I actually learned that on the ghost tour.
Oh, great.
So going back to the hotel, I was kind of spooked, and I was like, I don't know if I want to even shower alone. Do I want to keep the door open and shower, or, and then I was like, nah, I'm going to be brave, and I'm just going to shower.
Right.
So
hey, Maya, there's something rubbing on your mic, I think.
Is there? Is it better now?
No.
I'm not doing anything.
All right. Is it you, Jor?
Is it Jory?
No, I'm just sitting here.
Can you hear it, Jory?
I hear it.
Okay. I don't know. Go ahead.
Okay. And as I'm getting ready to get into the shower, being brave, you start
And you didn't
calling
want to
me.
close the door.
I didn't. I know I was being too chicken. You started calling me, and I was like, great. I don't even think I'm going to shower at this point. So I go out there, and you're like, what? Tell me if that's not a hand on the wall. So I looked, and it was in a very odd place. It was almost sideways, and it looked kind of like as if someone had gotten their hand wet and put it on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
You know how like when you get paint wet, it kind of like
Flat paint,
turns
yeah.
darker or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like it goes through, yeah. Well, it looked like a wet handprint on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, I didn't do that. I wasn't even in the room.
Right.
And it was too big to be either of our hands.
Right. Yeah, and that's another thing I had forgotten to mention. I had put my own hand in the air, but you guys can't see it. Yes, it was almost sideways, as if somebody had
Like someone was
braced
leaning up
themselves.
against the wall,
Yeah,
sort of.
yeah,
Yeah.
leaning up against the wall, but it was a little bit lower.
Right. Like they're trying to hold themselves up or something.
Right. And did you take your shower?
Yeah, with the door open.
Yes, you did. And me, I had to sit on the bed and stare into the bathroom
Yeah.
while you did so.
We were both like, I don't want to be alone. And I'm like, I got to shower.
I know, and I'm like,
I
please
just spent
don't
the day in
shower.
New Orleans. I got to shower.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was
So
creepy.
that was our personal experience with the Hotel Provincial. And then, like I said, Jory and his wife Kendra and I stayed in, I want to say it's building 3. And it was right next to the wall of the convent of the Ursuline nuns. And is it okay if I tell them this story, Jory? Or do you
Which
want to keep your
one?
street cred?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Okay.
You go ahead. I don't care.
So I went into their room and pulled open their shutters and was like, oh my God, you guys get to stay next to the dead baby wall. In which they were like, excuse me? And so I said, this wall. The story is, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you the story of the convent of the Ursuline nuns. And then I'll tell you what happened with Jory. So the Catholic Church decided that, with all these criminals being sent to New Orleans to build it, that they should send a presence. And what they sent were nuns. And they built a convent right smack in the middle of the French Quarter. And there's a couple of stories about the Ursuline nuns. One is the Casket Girls. And that's probably if you know about the Ursuline nuns, that could be one of the stories that you know. Well, the men had been there for a decent amount of time building New Orleans. And there were no women. And they weren't thrilled about it. And they decided that they were just going to get drunk and stay drunk and maybe not work so hard. So France decided that they should probably go ahead and send some women for these men for quote unquote brides. So they shipped women over, but the men knew that these brides were coming. So they would wait at the port for the ships to come in and wait there like starving dogs. And that, of course, wasn't going to go over very well with the Catholic Church. So someone came up with a brilliant idea that they would move the ladies out of the ships in caskets. And they stayed in the convent for a while, and they started this theory amongst themselves, the men, that either the women who had come over on the ships had gotten sick during their voyage and had all died, in which case they were not being buried anywhere. So what the hell? They're vampires, obviously. Or B, they have survived, but they have to be in a casket. Therefore, they're vampires, obviously. Apparently, since they were drunk, it was clearly the answer. So that began the legend of the Casket Girls in New Orleans. Now, eventually, the women and the men, they had a special kind of friendship, and there was babies being born. Mommy and Daddy, they loved each other. And some of the single women would stay in the convent while they were pregnant. And the convent wasn't keen on also being a daycare, raising these babies. These were nuns. They didn't want kids. They didn't want a husband other than Jesus. So the story goes that when a woman would give birth to her baby, they would take the baby and place them in the wall that surrounds the convent. And that people began to hear cries in the wall. And supposedly, to this day, you can hear the cries of the babies. And now, I've heard two stories. One, that they did take part of the wall down and they did not find babies. And I've heard that, two, they did take part of the wall down and there were babies. So, it's up for you to decide, and possibly how much you've had to drink if you walk past the Ursuline nun. What's the word I'm looking for?
Convent.
And hear babies crying. So, back to Jory. I open up his shutters and say, "Oh my gosh, you are so lucky. You get to stay next to the baby wall, the dead baby wall." And of course, they were like, "Yeah, what?" So I explained the story of what is supposedly in this wall. And that night, it was hot and muggy because New Orleans, and they needed their air conditioning turned up, and Jory wouldn't get out of bed to turn the air conditioning up for his wife because he didn't want to see no dead babies.
Well, I wasn't looking forward to having any Civil War soldiers marching around in my room or dead babies crying at me. So I sucked up the mugginess of New Orleans that night.
Yeah. But that is our experience in that hotel, and I stayed there again with my whole family and in Building 5, and did not have a spooky story. But on the other hand, I had just gotten off a cruise ship. I was sick. I went right to bed. So if anything spooky happened, it wouldn't have mattered to me. What do you want to talk about next, Jory?
Okay. Well, I'm going to stick with the pirate theme.
Okay.
And this was a part of our ghost tour when we took it.
Oh, yes. And also the Ursuline convent is part of the ghost tour as well.
Mm-hmm.
Before we move on, do you want to tell them how we, let me say, were our maturest level when the ghost tour went by and we were in the bar of the Hotel Provincial?
Then do you want me to tell our viewers how drunk we were?
I didn't say that. We might have been. But sure, go ahead.
Well, we'll keep it PG. We were
Okay.
enjoying many beverages that night
Hurricanes.
after our own ghost tour.
Mm-hmm.
And we were having a little nightcap. And another ghost tour came by, and they were doing the history of the hotel, and we had a good view of them from our table in the bar.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided that I was going to make shadow puppets to try and scare the people outside into thinking there was ghosts in the Hotel Provincial.
Yeah. At the same time, I decide that I'm going to make my camera flash so that when they saw their pictures later, they would think they saw orbs.
Yeah.
Instead, they went home and told the story about the two freaks in the Hotel Provincial.
One was doing weird things with his hands, maybe sign language.
Help me.
Help me. I'm stuck in this hotel.
With this woman flashing her camera. Yeah. I might have also snuck up on a vampire tour and scared a lady pretty badly
Yeah.
by grabbing her hoodie.
Yeah.
It was a night.
Exit Light had a little too much of the happy juice.
Well, you're in New Orleans. If you don't, you should be arrested.
Right. I think it's in the law.
It is.
That you have to be sauced. Otherwise, what are you doing here?
Yeah, go home.
Go home.
Exactly.
That's how I partied. Like, I'm in New Orleans. I'm going to have alcohol on me at all times.
Your wife and I hit New Orleans, and the sign said happy hour starts at 1, and we made sure to be back there.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Because we were like, oh, it does?
Oh.
I'll set my watch.
Okay.
Be right back.
Here we go. Let's go do something till 1.
Yeah, that's what we did too. We're like, what can we do till 1? Beignets? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, beignets.
Okay, go ahead and tell us about Pirate Alley.
Yeah, so I'm going to start talking about, Pirate Alley. So here's a little bit of history.
Okay.
Pirates Alley hasn't always been officially called as such, but local New Orleanians have preferred
New Orleans.
Yes,
there you go.
Have preferred that name to its real one, Rue Orleans, since it was first laid out in the late 18th century.
What was it?
Rue Orleans.
Oh, okay.
Measuring 600 feet long and 16 feet wide, Pirates Alley was never intended to be a main street with shops and businesses. Instead, it was meant to act as a thoroughway, or as the Brits like to call them, snicket-ways.
Snicket-ways. Rob's
Snicket
here.
ways.
Is that true? Is that what you would call an alley, Rob? A snicket-way? Let's see if he answers me. He probably left as soon as he was like, oh my gosh. You guys are so stupid.
For early New Orleanians, Pirates Alley created a passage between Chartres and Royal Streets alongside St. Louis Cathedral. By laying out such a path, locals did not have to take the time to walk over to St. Peter or St. Anne Streets. It was originally unpaved, though the cobblestones seen today were added in the 1830s. Wow. Not until the 1980s, when Jackson Square became a pedestrian mall, did Pirates Alley become a main shopping hub. Wow.
Huh.
That's
Weird.
crazy.
Yeah.
So I'll give just one notable building, and then I'll get into the ghost stories. So I just
Rob
mentioned
Rob says Janal. What'd you say it was, Jory?
a snicket way?
He
Pirates
says
Alley?
it's called a Ginnal. Ginnal.
Oh. Maybe old school Brits called it that?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to say that Rob's the authority on what Brits call that.
Yeah. Yeah, it just says here it was meant to act as a throwaway or a throughway, or as the Brits like to call them, snicket ways.
I don't understand why we would even be talking about what the Brits call it. The French are the ones that were there.
Well, it was a French and Spaniard colony, and then
Yeah.
an American colony after Jefferson bought it. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Who gives a crap what the Brits called it, right, Rob?
Oh, Rob. Don't take that, Rob.
We'll care about what the Brits called things when we talk about haunted Connecticut or something.
And by the way, today's Independence Day.
Yes.
Oh, boom.
Picking on the Brits today because I'm American.
Rob, don't take this. Don't.
It's all joking.
We're joking.
All right, so I just mentioned it, but the St. Louis Cathedral. Standing tall and imposing next to Pirates Alley is St. Louis Cathedral. Though this is the third structure to have been erected on this plot of land, the first church was erected in 1727.
Wow.
It was named in honor of the French King Louis IX, the Saint King. Interestingly enough, the cathedral has been anointed as a basilica today, but we New Orleanians crave consistency, so it continues to be referred to as St. Louis Cathedral. So I have a story about this.
By the way, Rob says, we let you win. Is that what your history books say? All right, go ahead and tell us your story, Jory.
So this isn't a spooky story, rather more of a comical story. But on the ghost tour with my mother, Exit Light, and my wife, we stopped at the St. Louis Cathedral, and we were being given a history lesson by our tour guide. And as we're listening to the story, a drunk person wobbles up to the church behind us and decides that's the perfect place. He's got to release the Kraken, perhaps, and decides he's going to pee all over the church with all of us standing right there.
The amazing thing is, they didn't even charge us extra for that.
Which I thought was great.
I was grateful for that.
I was like, thanks for the free show, man. That was awesome. History, and we get a pee show. That is awesome.
Yeah, that was which is why, by the way, if you ever take a haunted tour in New Orleans, every person who takes you on the tour will tell you, if you drop it on the street or a sidewalk in New Orleans, leave it. If you drop your wedding ring on the street or the sidewalk in New Orleans, be prepared to get a new one, because you do not want to pick up what's going to come up with that. And that was a perfect example.
And that's not just what the humans do to the sidewalk. That's a below sea level sidewalk, folks.
Yeah, because I've been there when the manhole covers were being blown off from flooding, and
yeah,
that's a whole other
they were ready to blow while we were there, because it rained the entire time we were there. So in the back of my head, knowing what Katrina had did to this town, I was more scared of being flooded out of New Orleans than I was the ghosts of New Orleans.
Yeah. Hey, that city has taken a lot. It's burned down twice, taken hurricanes. Nothing's moving that city. Nothing moves those people. They are strong. I love it there. I love them. All right. So I am going to tell what's probably the most well-known. What? What?
I've only given you the history. I haven't given you the ghost stories.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please
It's
tell us
okay.
the ghost stories.
It's okay. I
I'm
just,
sorry.
I thought it was not just the history lesson.
I thought the point of this story was so you could tell us about the guy peeing.
No, well, that
It
was more of a
was.
side.
It
That was more of
was.
a side note story. But I do want to tell you about the ghosts that people see on Pirates Alley,
All
and
right.
not the ones wetting themselves.
Yeah, maybe he wasn't real. You don't
Whoa,
know. We
mind
had been
blown.
drinking a little bit, yeah.
Okay. One of the most historic locations on Pirates Alley is the Faulkner House Bookstore. Located right in the middle of Pirates Alley, this bookstore was what was once home to William Faulkner. Faulkner stayed in New Orleans in the 1920s. He even wrote his first novel, Soldier's Pay, while staying in this house. It is rumored that the ghost of William Faulkner still resides in this house. There have been many reports of people seeing the ghost of Faulkner still sitting at his writing desk, which is located in the store. In addition, ghostly smells of pipe smoke can sometimes be smelled wafting through the bookstore.
No way. Don't I always say that that's what New Orleans smells like to me? Pipe
Pipe
smoke.
smoke?
Yeah. Pipe smoke, a little bit of piss and shit. The Mississippi River. And like, okay, well.
The smell of pipe smoke, piss, and shit in the Mississippi.
In the morning.
Gets me up in the morning in a good mood.
And then the food that's cooked along there. That's what it smells like to me. It always smells like pipe smoke to me over there.
Well, I've only been there once so far, and it was during a
was
patch
raining.
of just raining the entire time. So for me, it just smelled like the Mississippi.
Yeah. We have to go when it's not. Well, I would say that like 3 out of 5 times I've been, it's been raining. But we'll go sometime when it's not raining, and you can smell very, very clearly pipe smoke.
Okay.
I think. Clearly, I'm smelling it.
Let's see here. It is well known that Faulkner liked to smoke a pipe while he wrote. Is this apparition that of William Faulkner or someone else?
Uh-oh.
Who did you piss off back there?
She's just giving you her opinion.
Oh, okay. All right.
She said, someone else.
Many people have also reported seeing the ghost of Jean Lafitte walking up and down Pirates Alley. But is it really him? Another legend states that it is not actually Lafitte's apparition, which is spotted in the early mornings, but another by the name of Reginald Hicks. As the story goes, Hicks was traveling on a ship in the Atlantic when the vessel was captured and ransacked by pirates. He was just a boy, and the pirates opted to take him with them and raise him. By the time of the War of 1812, Hicks had become a strapping first mate aboard a pirate ship. Allegedly, Hicks was one of the men to travel with Lafitte to go meet General Andrew Jackson. It was during his time in New Orleans that he had the opportunity to meet the Marie Angel. It's written weird.
Spell it.
I'm just going to call her Marie. Had an opportunity to meet Marie, a beautiful French Creole girl. They fell desperately in love, but all too soon they discovered she was pregnant with child.
Time to go to the wall.
Yep. Hicks refused to have his child be labeled illegitimate, and he and Marie immediately sought out a priest to marry them. But they had limited time. The war was rapidly approaching, and they could only think of a German minister that was, interestingly enough, doing time in the old parish prison. Hicks and Marie begged the prison guard to let them in. Although they were married, the German minister was forced to do by the Iron Gate along Pirates Alley. which I actually remember seeing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Their marriage was officiated by the church, and papers were drawn at the Cabildo too. But what happened to Hicks after? It is thought that he was killed during the war, leaving his beloved Marie a widow early into their marriage. Today, many couples choose to get married in Pirates Alley just as Reginald Hicks did. Oh, really?
Hmm.
But his ghost? It is said that Hicks's spirit still haunts Pirates Alley. Early in the morning, people have reported hearing wedding bells and the sounds of ghostly laughter, even as the alley is completely empty. One has to wonder, is it the pirate Hicks? And if so, is he still searching for his wife, even after death? Ooh.
Mm. Interesting.
There's still 2 more stories here, but did you want to talk about your story, or
No,
do you
go
want to
ahead.
keep going? Okay. The ghost of a priest. In the early I can't talk, I'm tired.
Colonization.
Thank you. Colonization period. It's been a fun 4th of July, folks. Here we go.
It's been a long day.
In the early colonization period, a Capuchin monk, Pierre Dagobert, arrived in the recently settled New Orleans. As a pastor at St. Louis Cathedral, then St. Louis Church, Father Dagobert was a joyous man who was quite loved by the congregation. However, when Louisiana was given to Spain, the French in the city began to revolt. After Bloody O'Reilly executed the Frenchmen who had rebelled, he refused to allow the men to be properly buried, as Catholic doctrine dictated. Say that 3 times fast. Father Dagobert refused to allow this to happen to the men. In the middle of the night, Father Dagobert, along with the help of 2 other priests, obtained the bodies of the dead Frenchmen. They held a proper, though secret, burial at the St. Louis Church before interring the dead at St. Louis Cemetery No. 1. Which, on a side note, is a cool place to go. I almost said hang out. To go walk around.
Yeah. Hey, can we ask Maya, do you want to comment on anything? You're a shy little mouse right now.
I'm just listening.
I thought you wanted to be in on this podcast.
Well, she can interject when she wants.
Do you have anything you want to say, Maya?
Not in particular right now.
What do you think it smells like in New Orleans?
It smells like... When we went, it kind of smelled like rain and like wet street.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
I like that.
Yeah, because it rained. It rained when we were there, too.
Yeah. But other than that, it smelled like old buildings.
Yeah.
I
think there's two kinds of people. People who will go and, like, we were talking to, Jory's best friend today, where he's like, it smells like piss, shit, and vomit. I think there's 2 kinds of people. The people that think that, and the people that think it's stepping back in history and it's amazing, and the people are so kind and warm and they feel that. And then people that just don't really like it that much. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it smells like cigarettes and...
Yeah, I don't think that I have never met a person who was like, man, it was all right. I've only met, I love it, I really hated it.
Yeah.
It's not all it's cracked up to be. And, it was really a letdown. And I'm just thinking, wow, we see this very differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you, me, Maya, JD, Kendra, we are clearly people who see it as, to me, it feels like taking a warm, deep breath. I just feel like my muscles relax, and it's so calming. And every place you go in, you're greeted and like in an honest way, like not like, hey, thanks for coming to whatever, you know. It's really like,
Genuine.
yeah, hey baby girl, you know, how are you, sweetheart? You know, I just want to go to everybody. Would you adopt me, please? You know.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
I just wanted Maya to peek in for a second.
Yeah.
It's nice to know she's still alive.
I had a pure mind back then, so
You had a pure mind back then.
yeah. So maybe if I went now, I would think it smelled like trash.
Are you serious?
No, I'm kidding.
Oh, I was gonna be like, really? Because you've been twice, you know.
Yeah, it was in the same year. I need to go back.
Yeah. I don't think your perception is gonna change.
No, definitely not.
When you come off that overpass down into where the houses start to become like vibrant,
Yeah.
and there's just something that I don't know. It's like Fantasy Island. There's a Mr. Rourke down there that's like, welcoming. Oh, welcome. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
weird. I'm just
It's
like,
good.
oh,
It's good vibes.
yeah.
The
Of
people
course,
there put out good vibes.
and we have Creole in our blood, so maybe that's it. Part of our DNA is like, this is our home.
Yeah, probably.
Probably.
All right. Tell us your ghost story, Jory.
Yes. So, whether the Spanish governor and Bloody O'Reilly ever discovered this treason is unknown within history, but it is safe to say that Father Dagobert is still watching out for those around his old stomping grounds, or his ghost is, anyway. People have reported hearing ghostly singing within the cathedral, but also along Pirates Alley, too. The disembodied voice of a male has been reported in the same area, but don't worry, Father Dagobert's ghost is friendly, just as the man was himself. And we got one more. Wait, hold
I'm
on.
sorry, because you know what? I think I thought you were done with the father's story.
I wasn't.
I'm sorry. Sorry I had you come in right then, Maya. Sorry, Jor.
You made me interrupt him.
No.
I
Actually,
did. I forced you.
I know. Actually, that was the last story. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, then it's fine.
Yeah, no, she's fine.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to read a little bit about the La Laurie Mansion, and this is from a book that we bought when we were on tour. I've been to the La Laurie Mansion, and if you watched American Horror Story, you have a basic idea of what happened in the La Laurie Mansion. And I have a story that I wrote about Madame Lalaurie in my playlist. Feel free to listen to it. So here we go. In 1834, a crime occurred that shocked our city beyond belief, a crime that eventually became known as the blemish on our city. Madame Delphine Lalaurie became an infamous name in New Orleans' dark history. Also, as a side note, Delphine Lalaurie had been married 2 other times. So this is a woman who threw off social norms and somehow managed to stay in the upper crust of the city and not be have their backs turned on her. So I think she must have had some sort of a charismatic kind of a personality to have been allowed these horrible things like being divorced twice and her, well, we'll go on. So she lived in the large gray mansion on the corner of Royal and Governor Nichols Streets with her physician husband and her 2 daughters. They were socialites, best known for their lavish cocktail parties and their extremely well-behaved slaves. This story, by the way, came directly from the New Orleans Bee, the newspaper of the time. So here we go. Let's talk about Delphine Lalaurie, who was batshit crazy. And maybe they stayed in social graces because her husband, she always married in the same social circle, so she didn't ever marry like what would be quote unquote down. And she kind of managed to marry up, you know. Um, while preparing for one of her parties, Madame Lalaurie was having her hair combed by a little 12-year-old girl who was a slave, and her name was Leah. When Leah accidentally pulled a tangle, Madame Lalaurie became enraged, and she beat the child with a bullwhip. Desperately trying to escape this brutal punishment, Leah ran out onto the balcony, climbed up onto the railing, and fell to her death in the courtyard below. Madame Lalaurie was brought before the court, where she was fined $300 for the crime. This was just one of several incidents that she was brought before the court for that involved abusing her slaves. She was a lovely woman. A few months later, on April 10th, 1834, a fire broke out in the Lalaurie home while one of their famous parties was in full swing. It is believed that this fire was started by the slaves to bring attention to their plight. The fire brigade entered through the courtyard, and if you go on the tour, you're not going to see the courtyard. You only see the frontage of the building. You don't see the courtyard part. And proceeded to put out the fire in the kitchen, which was located in a separate building. And you would see this building too. It's about 5-6 feet away from the actual Lalaurie mansion. The slaves then directed their attention to a locked room on the 3rd floor. And they don't mention this, but when the fire department went in and they put the fire out, the slaves were chained to the stoves, the ovens. So they literally put their life at risk by lighting a fire in a tiny room in which they were chained to. Screams and cries could be heard from within the room. The firemen used a battering ram to break down the door, and when it flew open, seasoned firemen fell to their knees, vomiting from the stench of death within. Slaves were chained to the walls throughout. They were maimed and disfigured. They were obvious victims of cruel medical experiments. Many were dead, but some were still alive. Several had faces so disfigured that they looked like gargoyles. One man looked as if he had been the victim of some crude sex change operation. One poor soul, a woman, had managed to break free from her shackles. Instead of being relieved that someone had come to rescue her, she ran in fear of further torture, and she jumped out of a window, falling to her death. And the window remains sealed to this day. And if you go to New Orleans and visit this home, you will see that there is a window that is sealed up. Another victim obviously had her arms amputated and her skin peeled off in a circular pattern, making her look like a human caterpillar. And another had been locked in a cage that had the newspaper described as barely large enough to accommodate a medium-sized dog. Breaking the cage open, the rescuers found that all of her joints had been broken and reset at odd angles, so she resembled a human crab. As the survivors were being removed from the residence, a mob of the party guests assembled outside, outraged at what had obviously been going on within the house. They had no idea what kind of monsters the Lalauries were. Before the angry crowd could ransack the house and find them, Delphine and Louis Lalaurie and their children slipped out through the carriage and disappeared at the river. Many believe that the Lalauries went back to Paris. So that house, I can imagine, is very dark. Several people have owned it. At one time, Nicolas Cage owned this house. And somebody's crunching. Are you crunching? Are you crunching, Jory?
I'm not eating or crunching or doing anything.
Sounds like you're standing in the middle of Piccadilly Square. So this house, what's interesting about this house is when you stop on the ghost tour, there's a home across the street, and it is protected by wrought iron bars and barbed wire, but not like the kind of barbed wires you'd see on a ranch. This is some serious barbed wire, that the barbs are like shark's teeth and razor sharp, and it wraps all the way around the top of this wrought iron fence, because those people they are seriously not wanting you to come over their property.
Right.
So you're standing there looking at the Lalaurie mansion, hearing these stories and seeing the window, and you look behind you, and there's this massive, scary barbed wire. So Nicolas Cage owned this house. Nicolas Cage said that he experienced scary things in there. I have been on tours where at the time of the tour, the family who owned the home was home, and their children would like scamper out onto the balcony at night, because we always take the latest tour, and that is such an odd juxtaposition to imagine that right there where that balcony is, this couple, this, not just Madame Lalaurie, by the way. I mean, her husband was involved too, but she always gets the blame for it. Tortured these people and would try to like cut one limb off of one and cut a limb off another one, and try to like exchange them, and like they said, do a sex change and do all these weird experiments on them. So I can only imagine that it was so he could maybe further his career as a doctor. But the complete and utter lack of understanding or caring that they were humans that they were doing this to is so awful. And then you go on a tour and you see these little kids running around the same area. It's like, ugh. And the current owners say that they've had strange things happen. Nicolas Cage said that things would be, like thrown through the rooms, or his tablecloths would be ripped off the table with dishes and stuff on it. He's a little weird, so that could just be him. But I don't think that everybody that moves in there is a little special, because you know the history on that. I mean, I would buy the place.
I would too.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's so crazy to think of what went on in there. So that is a little bit of history of haunted New Orleans. There's so much history. There's so many stories. We could be here for days talking about this. The cemeteries are amazing. So many films have been filmed in these locations. I will watch a movie and be like, "Oh, I've been there, been there, been there," or what is it? Is it CSI New Orleans?
Yeah.
They film their office is filmed across the street from the Hotel Provincial, so it's really weird, and it's just really interesting. And seeing you even go back to Interview with a Vampire, and you can be like, "Oh, I've been in there. I've been." The Interview with the Vampire, the book, is what got me interested in New Orleans because of the way Anne Rice described the city. I just knew I had to go there. This is someplace I have to go because I don't know. It's mysterious and dark and beautiful. I just knew. And when I went there, I thought I was struck by how it's exactly the way she portrays it in my mind. It's exactly the way that New Orleans should look.
Yeah, it's a very unique city, not just America, but the entire world. It's got this American, Spanish, French, African, Creole,
Caribbean, yeah.
Caribbean, voodoo mixture that you're not really going to find anywhere else.
Yeah.
And it creates an ambiance that's both dark, but at the same time, light. There's these people will just walk down the road for whatever reason, and we're doing jazz band sing-alongs, and I think it gives you not just the scary stories, but it gives you a good time that you're not going to have anywhere else in the world.
Random weddings pop up, and they're dancing down the street, and you're encouraged to just join it. Make a parade.
Just walk along with the newlyweds and let's hang out.
Yeah. I love it.
Yep.
I don't think that, like you said, that given its history, it should be so dark. And the fact that it's burned down twice, and how it was during the Civil War, the kind of people they sent over to begin to build this place. The fact that it exists in the first place is impossible.
Mm-hmm.
It's below sea level. It's swampy.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't be able to exist. And you would think it was dark, but I don't know. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Liz, what do you think about it, Maya? Maya Danielle.
Sorry, I have to come back from Twitch every time you say my name.
Oh.
I'm not sure what I think about it.
You're not sure what you think about it?
No.
Well, thanks for your addition to this podcast.
Yeah. I didn't know all those things about Madame Lalaurie. I guess I didn't read that in the book.
Well, the American Horror Story, Coven, Kathy Bates plays Madame Lalaurie, and remember she gets sent to stay in her house? That's her, hell? Yeah.
I thought the show was just being a little overdramatic. I guess.
Oh.
I guess reality is a little bit overdramatic.
Yeah. Reality was worse than what you were seeing.
Yeah, you couldn't put
reality was much worse than what we saw.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right, Jeremy. Truth, stranger than fiction.
You didn't know
that.
You could hear him say that.
But do you feel like it's a happy place?
Overall, I feel like I feel good vibes. I like being there. It's not like a overwhelming sad feeling. It feels
Yeah.
good for me.
Yeah.
I like being there.
Me too.
Me three.
So, hey, you guys, let's actually, I have reservations next month to go to New Orleans, so let's all go.
Alright, I'm down.
This is my vacation right here, Devin.
Well, I understand
I'll
why
go.
you came here.
You
Okay.
can go with us, honey. You, me, and Jeremy.
Okay. We should do a podcast from there.
Yeah.
A
Right on
live
Bourbon
podcast.
Street.
Well, no. No. I don't think we'll do that. All right. We're going to cut it short tonight because it is late. So, I want to thank Maya. Thank you, Maya.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jeremy.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Jory. And, of course, I have loved having you here.
Well, thank you for having me in your home and on the podcast. Sorry to those listening who are expecting another 4-hour marathon, but it is a holiday and it is late.
Yes.
And there's fireworks going on outside.
Yeah, there's fireworks going off right outside my window.
So I'm going to go into this real fast. For those of you wondering, I finally heard if I get to be monetized or not. And the answer is no. I do not get to be monetized. So, well, good question. They had to see, okay, I'm taking a hit at you, YouTube. I'm taking a hit. So they had to finish all the applications by the end of June because they said they were going to. And I really don't think they looked at the smaller channels. The way they were going at it was they were looking at the channels with the most views all the way down, and the most subscribers, I mean, and all the way down. So I have about 1,200 subscribers. Almost. We're just a couple away. So when it came down to it, I would say with a decent amount of certainty that they did not look at my channel, because the reason they gave me was that I'm not allowed to upload duplicate content, like somebody else's videos, or somebody else's art. Like if they had made a painting and I put it on my channel and talked about it, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to upload content from a TV show or a movie, and they use that as an excuse, which I have not done. I have not done even one single thing on the list of reasons they gave me as to why I will not be monetized.
Yeah.
And the problem is that I'm not a partner. And if you're not a partner, you can't email them and say, hey, I think you were looking at somebody different than me. So you have to go around this back doorway and share a concern, which I'm sure that they don't give two poops about, because I'm not a partner. So I don't matter. And I can reapply in August if I want to. So YouTube is we're going to be moving over more and more over to Twitch, I would say. I have a Patreon. If you would like to become a Patreon member and donate to Patreon, that would be unnecessary because all my content is free. But if you feel it deep inside your heart, I would be ever so grateful. Also, you can subscribe to me on Twitch, and we're going to be allowing subscribers to call in and take part in a short part, a little bit of a conversation, have a comment, ask a question. And eventually, we would like to have perks like subscribers or Patreon members will get an extra video or a part 2 of a story I've written. I won't put part 2 on YouTube. Patreon subscribers will get it, or Twitch subscribers will get it. And so, as always, though, my content is, it's not necessary to do something like that. So don't feel pressured. And then we're going to do merch. Yeah, we are. We're going to do a Chupacabra merch. Right, Jeremy?
Yep.
Yes, we are. All right. So if that is all, and I am not on Twitch right now, yeah, I guess we're done. So good night, everybody. Thank you for coming. If you are not already subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. Please like this video. And please, did I say please?
Freeze?
Please click that bell, because YouTube and their algorithm, blah, 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 will not notify you if you do not also click the bell, so that you can be notified when your favorite content providers upload. So that goes across the board for everybody that you're subscribed to. And yeah, good night.
Good night.
Maya, say good night.
Say good night. Oh, I found it. Good night.
Good night. Good night. Bye.
Bye.
Good night.